funny. They're really their own lives when they're too busy texting each other, looking at themselves on their TikTok videos.
Pictures of their lunch. You're a fabulous white man.
And telling you how great they are.
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't play this game. It's a problem. I know, on the street.
Yeah, we'll do that.
No selfies with it.
Yeah. Tell me how to do it. I write it phonetically. I think I'm more stable.
It's spelled exactly.
You haven't read it just yet. Yep. I got the easy, dude.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll wait till I see him. How's it going anyway? What's the pre-interview? Good, bad?
It's holding its own, it seems like. Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
Do you remember the horrible Moorhead?
Been there, what's that?
Yeah. I still have 97 news read, and it has a picture of fire. And then the water. It says hell and so it's coming out.
And the river's only, it's not
97.
normally it's not, but then it's 15 miles. So, good thing is we have a lot of mitigations.
Yeah, since then. I don't remember. I'm shorted out with the water. Just with the headline. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the situation.
Reels of Greyhound buses from St. Cloud. We used to, they would get there and then somebody grab it down here and say, oh, run it to the studio, put it on the radio.
We brought to the airport, and it was Rochester Express that we would get, our tapes and all that running and screaming.
Because this weekend.
Relics.
If you know, what we were talking about.
I used to do my Did you? Yeah.
I was going to do Alex Weather.
We're having a TV.
We had each other out here.
Farther down the cave.
Yeah. Part of the news. What were you going to say? Oh, this weekend.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, we need to keep our,
No, because you really, I mean, long-term forecasting is still, it's not exact science.
really good.
The helicopter?
Yeah. Oh.
No, Brad, that's what you guys do too, a lot. I mean, we're real big. I mean, you literally moved your whole newsroom up there.
Yeah.
Fly so weird. Yeah. The tape, throw the tape on the helicopter.
Is that strong? Eventually.
That's the question. So the wholesale is different. Last year, merchandise lost their houses.
Yeah.
So they could sell houses like the county here.
Sure.
Their pilot
Yeah.
program should be where
To
they're supposed to be.
hold the
That's
good.
And I'll
Well,
have
just like
North Dakota.
we had to put my phone I'm not gonna leave. Yeah.
Read the holiday.
I'm not gonna leave now. It's like, oh,
Yeah, the Twin Cities media.
That was
That
from
was
St.
it.
Louis. Yeah.
Our pilot, there was no years of Vietnam.
It's that way.
He said, that's because he's across the Vietnam. Shoot up a bunch of more pigs, throw them up and bring them back. Have a job. So he knew way he kind of had experience.
Starts to come down here, Rock Island, St. Louis, they're starting to
go. Sure, still going on. Oh,
I would say, hey, come on, let's go talk.
yeah.
Mention a few weeks and be out there. It's gonna come to
Yeah, your ringer. Mine's on. Never can tell. It is something to behold, the river. Like, my mom lives in Southeast, so I go back and bridge all the time. And I was thinking the other night, I should pay more attention to it. I was gonna take Easterbrook Road also. I was gonna take Easterbrook Road because I can see that 90 is snarled up. Oop, I'm going that way. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's a good business. You should, I might ask you about that. Was that your,
one of my talking points there.
I know.
See you all.
See you again.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, I'll just turn it to you, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us out here today, and I think you probably made the connection here. All of our emergency managers from across the state are holding their conference today, and so it's appropriate that these are the folks that do the work. These are the folks that have been planning for months to prepare for spring flooding. These are the folks that understand what that binder of decision-making looks like for their individual counties and cities. And they're sharing best practices. They're working together on the things that they need to do. And Minnesota's incredibly lucky. Over the last 4 years, and I saw it for 12 years as a member of Congress, and then I saw it as a private citizen, whether it was the tornado in St. Peter, responding to that, or it was the seasonal flooding. Minnesota has some of the most professional and most collaborative emergency managers of any place in the country, and you're seeing that executed right now. We were with you last Wednesday at that time of the predictions around rain. Were accurate, Dan, so you were correct on that. We saw some pretty heavy rain, especially in the Mississippi St. Croix Basin, and we're seeing some of the crest change a little bit. I think the good news is, once again, the preparations that were put in place still at this point in time, we've not seen extensive damage either to homes or to public infrastructure. And we now get this little lull between the last rains over the weekend and where we're seeing over the next 10 to 14 days an opportunity to be right at the heart of this and to get a better idea for folks maybe where this lands. So again, I want to express my deep gratitude for all the folks who are in this building at their breakout sessions, the emergency managers who do the work, the individual work on the ground that make this whole system work, and then of course the folks that you see here, our partners at the federal, the state, and then of course the Weather Service, who helps keep us on top of exactly what's happening. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to the experts. We'll make sure we all take questions at the end. With that, I'll turn it over to Dan. Let me get that out of your way.
Thank you, Governor.
There you go.
So as the governor said, we are right in the middle of the event now. Barring anything too extreme in the near future, we should continue to round the top of this event. A lot of the rivers out there are already cresting or have crested already. The few that have yet to crest should be doing so in the next few days. We just need to keep a very close eye on the weather patterns up ahead, just to make sure that nothing too extreme comes. As the governor mentioned, sometimes you can get heavier rain than it initially looks like. That did happen last week, and that did have some effect on the rivers. We do have another system coming up that we'll want to make sure that doesn't happen with this one. If we get through that one, we should continue to round the peak through this event. So taking a look right now at what the current state of the rivers are and what we're expecting. The map here that we're showing on the left, showing the rivers who are currently in flood, ranging anywhere from the yellows in minor to the purples in major flood. compared to what they were forecast to do, the maximum level that they were expected to do through May 2nd. And you'll notice with just a few exceptions, almost every color is the same, meaning every river is either doing or has done what it's going to do. The two notable exceptions being the Red River of the North below Grand Forks has yet to crest, as has the Mississippi River along most of its points, especially once you get downstream of the Twin Cities. Still taking a look at the snow cover, we did get a little bit with that last system, but for the most part, there is very little to any snow left yet to melt into the rivers. Exception, of course, being the Arrowhead, where that mostly will be emptying into Lake Superior, and around the Red River of the North, up around Grand Forks and Fargo, some of that is yet poised to empty into that river. At this time, that does not appear to be enough to cause any significant change in the flood forecast up there. And we also have favorable melt conditions up there, so just mild during the day, cold at night. So we do not have conditions expected to let that water up in North Dakota rapidly inundate those rivers, so we're in good shape there. So looking ahead, we are in the middle of a fortunate dry streak here, and with very little, if any, precipitation forecast for the next few days. Through Thursday, just less than a half inch with a system going across northern Minnesota. That amount of rain will have very little, if any, impact at all on the rivers. And then we have a system coming in this weekend. Right now, that looks to be, on the whole, about a half inch to maybe an inch. That amount of rain, if we can hold it to that much, shouldn't be enough to cause really many issues along the rivers. It might just prolong a few of those crests, such as along the St. Croix and Mississippi. Maybe keep those up, cresting another day or two. But any significant changes, we're not really expecting that. We will want to watch this system. It's one of those where it could become closed off. It could become closed off, where the pattern starts to slow down. It could hang around a little longer than what we're currently expecting. If that were to happen, we've seen some signals where instead of an inch, we could be approaching 1, 2 inches, maybe more. Even that wouldn't have a profound effect on the water that we're seeing out there, but it's something we'll have to watch, again, just in case it does prolong the crest or nudge them up a little bit. But other than that, we don't see any signal for any significant changes to what we expect, which is, again, to either continue cresting or crest shortly and then start falling across the board. Taking a look at a couple of the rivers out there, the St. Croix at Stillwater has reached its crest, where it will hold for much of the week, just into major flood stage. Then we start having it forecast to go down a little bit. That could get prolonged a little longer if we do get that inch plus of rain with this weekend, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that major hold into next week as well. Further downstream, once you get to the Mississippi River at St. Paul, there is a wave of a crest coming down the Minnesota. Right now it's right around the Jordan area, and that will be approaching the Mississippi River, emptying just up of St. Paul. Because of that crest has yet to happen. We're expecting that over the next few days, right around 18 to 19 feet. Again, that's really not going to change much for the worse unless we get a lot more rain this weekend than we're anticipating. And then going up to the Red River of the North, that one at Fargo at least has already started to go down. It didn't even make flood stage up there, and we lucked out with some fortunate groundwater conditions. The ground was able to take in a little more water than it had been looking, so that kept the river from peaking as much as it could. So that is crested there at Grand Forks. That one is cresting now, and then it will just be the communities downstream from there that will see their crest coming up in the next week or two. And that's all I have. From here, I will pass it on to Rob Wilkins.
Thank you, Governor Walz. The Corps of Engineers continues to support communities within the region, providing engineer technical assistance and sharing information with our partners at every level, as well as our tribal partners. We have people out in the field right now monitoring the rivers, reporting on snowpack, and keeping an eye on where the flood is at. As we look forward to the next week of flooding throughout the states, pending any significant precipitation, as you just heard, most of the rivers will have or will begin a downward trend, with the exception of the main stem Mississippi. Flows on the Mississippi continue to rise, which we are monitoring at our lock and dam facilities for the next few days before peaking. As many of the tributaries, such as the St. Croix, drain into the Mississippi and we see a downward trend in them, they are feeding the main stem Mississippi, and so we will see a slight rise and then it'll even out before going down. The levels on the Mississippi River have had a significant impact on our Corps of Engineers navigation mission, providing open and free navigation along the river. We now have 9 of our lock and dam facilities closed due to high water, including lock and dam 10 that closed today. We hope to reopen these lock and dam facilities within a week to 10 days, but the exact timing will depend on how quickly the water levels drop and when it is safe to resume navigation. As those facilities reopen, we will publish that information both on social media and on our websites. Elsewhere, we continue using our reservoirs that the Corps of Engineers controls to reduce flood risk to downstream communities. In the Mississippi River headwaters area, we are currently storing water in the Pocagama Lake near Grand Rapids and Sandy Lake near McGregor. They're both high as the Mississippi River is flooding. We hope to begin reducing lake levels from these reservoirs later this week. That will increase storage capacity in those reservoirs for future precipitation that we receive. Sir, we continue to stand ready to support the state of Minnesota if requested, along with our technical monitoring and modeling. We are prepared and have flood response materials and support ready, including sandbags, pumps, and temporary levee construction if needed, though we are looking forward to the downward turn in the rivers. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Governor. So as the Governor stated, we are here at our Homeland Security Emergency Management Conference, where we're meeting with many of our counterparts from across the state, several who couldn't make it because they're still in the middle of the flood fight, but we are in contact with them as we work through the next couple of days and weeks, and the good news of the rivers heading down. Currently, we are still at a state emergency operations center that is monitoring, enhanced monitoring, and watching what's going on, and working with Dan and the Weather Service to make sure that we have eyes on and can provide information to our local emergency managers to help them continue to do the great work that they're doing out there. To date, we have not had a request of the state through the county or tribal emergency managers to help. However, in the days and coming weeks, we'll be working on some damage assessments to try to help decide where we go to the next steps, whether recommending to the governor for a governor's declaration and using the DACA money to support the recovery, or do we need to move up to a presidential declaration? And those will be coming in the next few weeks as we look as the water recedes and goes away, we can start to identify those damages. I would still like to express the safety side of this. Please, rivers are still high. I know you want to take pictures, go ahead, use your zoom lens to do that. The rivers are high. We saw people canoeing the other day down the Mississippi. We highly recommend to stay out of that water and not become a need to be rescued. So as we do that, pay attention to the rain so that in case you need to do something for some overland flooding, you have your kit ready and you know where to go. Please pay attention to our website, dps.hscm.mn.us.gov, and we will provide all that information on there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Thank you to our partners from the Corps of Engineers, National Weather Service. Again, a huge thank you to the partners out in each of these regions, the local county and community emergency managers. I would echo Kevin's words on this. Stay away from that water. Don't drive around the barricades, and understand that this still can be a dangerous situation. I think the good news is, as you're hearing it, if the pattern holds over the next few days, we will start to have gone down over the top of the peak. We will probably plan on gathering next week where the posture will change a bit. And as Kevin said, then a lot of work will be done on assessments, things that we have to rebuild. Again, a huge thank you to the legislature that we now have signed into law, the disaster assistance contingency account that can use to draw on immediately to help communities as they respond. So with that, we'd be glad to answer any questions.
I have a question for Mr. Wilkins from the Corps. I'm just wondering if you could talk in lay terms what's going on with barge traffic on the Mississippi right now for people who don't really understand the whole lock and dam system and, you know, that kind of stuff.
Of course. So our lock and dam system, we have 12 lock and dams within our district here going from Minnesota down into Iowa. They start at Upper St. Anthony Falls and go down to Lock and Dam 10. What's happening right now is there really isn't any barge traffic moving up and down the river. The river level has risen high enough that our lock and dam facilities are wide open. Normally with a lock system, a barge will come into the lock. If it's going downriver, it'll come into the lock, and then we will drain water from the lock and open the downward gate so it can exit out at that appropriate level. What's happening right now is the water is so high that both gates are open, freely allowing the water to travel through. That creates velocities that make navigation for those barges almost impossible and not safe through those facilities. Our dams are also wide open right now, allowing that water to pass southward. And so it's very difficult for us to regulate how much water is going through. So at the lock and dam facilities that are closed to navigation, barge traffic is not going through those until it is safe to operate them where the barges can go through without damaging the barge or the facility.
Might that be as early as next week or not?
It could be, but I cannot commit to anything because ultimately it's the safety of the operators, safety of the barges, and safety of the facilities that will determine when those can actually reopen. Of course.
So, speaking of, back to the barge.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious. Can you tell us how big of an impact it has on commerce? I mean, are they bumming out that they can't get their stuff down, or is this kind of a typical spring?
Ma'am, it certainly has an impact. I would not be the right person to tell you a dollar value of what that impact would be, and I'm sure we probably will not know the impact until this event is over.
But you said 9 of them are closed or open right now? Closed meaning open?
So,
I see what you did there.
yes, they are closed to navigation traffic
Yes.
with the gates fully open to allow water to pass through.
So, but one is navigable?
It is. The Lock and Dam 2 at Hastings has not reached a high enough level for us to close that. However, with the ones north and south of it being closed, there's really no barge traffic going through at this time.
It seems like the Mississippi is the biggest concern going forward, you know, from here next week. Obviously, we've yet to see the crest there, and if any one of you guys can answer this, but we still have to see that river come down. How long could it be before we see some roads like Shepherd down there in St. Paul reopen?
I'm not sure about Shepherd River. I'm sure that there is a control point at which, when the water recedes to an appropriate level that is safe to reopen, the city will do so. We believe we'll see a downturn in the water of the Mississippi River over the next 7 to 10 days, pending additional precipitation. That water is all going to travel south, and it'll start to clear out over that time, pending any additional precipitation. I could hand over to the Weather Service if you want to answer maybe in more detail about rain and impacts on the water level.
Sure.
So yeah, the given impacts at any particular location, in this case St. Paul, really is going to depend on what river stage is closing that particular river or that particular road. Right now, for the Mississippi, that's going to be a pretty slow downturn. There's still quite a bit of water upstream in the Mississippi River, and like I've said earlier, the Minnesota has yet to push into it. So that's going to allow for a slower drop. It's likely going to be in flood for several more weeks after that point. Depending on what river level, we'll start to open up those roads, but we're likely looking at weeks for that.
And then, you know, to follow up on that, if we're seeing issues in like St. Paul right now. How long until we start seeing those same, you know, major flooding concerns kind of downstream areas like Hastings, Red Wing, you know, further down the Mississippi?
Roughly along the same time. as you saw in the map, they're all expected to reach their major flood all the way down to the border by May 2nd. So we're looking with just a few days after St. Paul is when the downstream will start to see their crest.
Are any water treatment plants in jeopardy right now, like Pig's Eye, for example, or any of the others downstream?
Not there. There are some water treatment plants throughout the state that are working with the Pollution Control Agency on bypass because of high water. Some up on the Minnesota River that are doing that. That is a discussion that's going on, and as that water recedes, they'll work with that local community on trying to figure out how to do that. Also, just so you know, on the question of the roads, you may see the water be gone on the road, but the local unit of government has to decide what happened, whether that's some scouring, some washing, something that happened on the road before they can reopen it to traffic. So there may be a time when that road is clear of water, but you can't drive on it, the barriers are still there in order that they can do assessment. And those are the kinds of things like culverts that we're working with the locals to be able to assess the damage, and that adds into if we can get to a threshold of where we go in the recovery space. So just understand that even though the water is not there, the local unit of government will not open that road until it's safe to travel on.
I was going to ask a question actually about how closely you guys are monitoring erosion. That might be a good segue.
We are, and in every event like this, depending on where the river is, whether that's overland or there is erosion that does happen. There's a lot of times that's mitigated because it's happened over years on the same particular stretch of road, but every flood, once you've seen one flood, you've seen one flood. They all act a little bit differently on how fast water flows or where it goes. So in order to err on the side of caution, we want to make sure that road is safe to travel on, and we look at all those factors with county highway, state, MnDOT, and others to make sure that they can be traveled on.
So is it safe to say, going back to what the governor said at the beginning, I mean, is it safe to say that barring any sort of currently unforeseen weather situation that we have managed to avoid major destruction to infrastructure, or is that premature?
It's a little too early to tell. I mean, some of the numbers were coming in, and I just want to use one that we talked about this morning. St. Louis County and the city of Duluth is looking at about $2 million in damage already, and that's without, you saw up in the Arrowhead, all that water being gone yet. So it really takes time for, once that water goes down, for us to get out with the counties and or tribal units of government to really see what happened. We can't do an assessment while the water is still there, but there are some numbers coming in that would be fairly staggering on county roads, ditches, agricultural ditches, culverts and things like that are normally impacted in a flood. So it'll take a couple of weeks to get a total number there.
In that $2 million, where is most of that money coming from? Is that roads? Is that bridges? Is that ditches that have been washed out?
It doesn't take much.
Roads, ditches, debris that comes downriver, all those things that add up. So the counties are really good at going out and surveying with their local partners to see what that damage. They're now doing initial damage assessments just to try to give us a number so that we can brief the governor's office on where we are in that particular project. They'll get out there, and then if we get to a point where we need to, we will bring in FEMA as a joint preliminary damage assessment to work with us to see, do we qualify for federal assistance, or are we going to work through the state? So that will happen over probably the next weeks to a month.
And once again, I'm not sure who answered it, but in the coming days, where are the points that you're most concerned about? Is it on the Mississippi from St. Paul south, or what are the points you're most concerned about?
We do watch the Mississippi. We are still concerned about a little bit about the northern red because it is not completely unfrozen and there's water up there. We are concerned a little bit of that Arrowhead, of the water that's sitting there. It's still got to go to Lake Superior, but what does it do while it does that? There's more roads, there's more bridges, there's more things that it can damage while it's doing that. So those are the three main points. The Minnesota River, while it has some damage, we can start to assess that, but that seemed to have gone down a little bit. Now we look at, as those rivers converge, the St. Croix, the Minnesota, the Mississippi, as they converge in St. Paul, once they dry out, we can really start to see a number.
Thinking back to the graphs that you guys had, the Red River mainly showed kind of a downward trend. Is that to say the Red River is crested? Are you guys saying that, barring any future precipitation?
Yeah, that was shown for Fargo, and it has crested at Fargo. And you can see that downward trend was pretty steady. So we don't see any type of precipitation on the horizon to reverse that trend. At Grand Forks, it's leveling off, so it is currently cresting, and then it will be the downstream locations, Oslo and all the way to the border, that we'll need to watch. But again, with favorable snowmelt conditions, not too much in the way of heavy precipitation, keeping in mind we do need to watch it, things can change. Assuming things stay as expected, those should crest shortly over the next week or two and then start to downturn there too.
Thank you again to the emergency managers. Thank you to our partners. You're absolutely right. There's more work to be done yet on this. And public, just keep listening to your local media. Keep watching what's there. And let's get through the next 10 days or so.
Governor, off topic.
Sure.
Legislative stuff. Do you think that the recreational marijuana bill will make it through the legislature?
Sure seems like it. I think most folks understand prohibition hasn't worked. The ability to be able to regulate, know what's in this stuff, be able to tax it and have that regime in place seems to make more sense. Looks like, again, I did not see today. I know they were bringing it back on the House side. They watched till late last night. I think so. I think Minnesotans know that they're ready to do this. It makes sense to do it. There's some of the expungement of the prior convictions that I think makes sense on a social justice standpoint, but I've always said all along I trust Minnesotans to make their own decisions. I think when you put this regulation into place, it just creates a safer transaction for folks.
How about gun safety legislation? Are you making any progress in convincing some members of your own party in the Senate that they need to get behind it?
On public safety? Yeah, I think so, and I think, again, I think your question is, well, we're going to need a little more money on the cannabis side of things too, so I think that's part of the public safety. Look, Minnesotans have a high expectation. We always are one of the safest states in the country. We're starting to trend in the right direction, but local communities have made it very clear to us that they think the right proposal, it's why we crafted it after listening to them, the $500 million that we're putting forward to go to those local communities makes sense. So you're right at this point in time. House and Senate had a few smaller numbers. This is when negotiations become important.
I'm talking about gun safety stuff.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear. Yeah, yeah, that's going to happen. I think that itself, folks have had it. Folks have had it on that issue. They are tired of their children having to do these drills. They know, as I said so clearly, that the proposals that are in front of them, whether it's extreme risk protection orders or background checks, actually work, and there's data to support that, and they don't infringe upon your lawful rights on gun ownership. This issue is a public safety protection of our children issue. As I said the other night, we're not going to hide behind it being a Second Amendment issue. I have every expectation that will pass both the House and the Senate, and I'll sign it into law in the coming weeks.
Once cannabis gets through a conference committee, if it passes through the Senate, of course, how soon after that do you foresee signing that into law?
Yeah, well, we'll get it worked out. That conference, I'm sure they would hold it relatively quickly. The House and Senate, I want to congratulate them, are moving at the pace that Minnesotans expected. Things are getting done. This is the way it's supposed to work. This isn't out of the ordinary. Remember early on that they're moving too fast type of things. This is what's supposed to happen. They'll get that organized. As many of you know, starting in 2019, we started doing the research necessary at the state level. We started putting all of the pieces in place that what will it take to stand up the agency that has to do this work by listening to other states, looking at what they had learned, whether it was having folks come out from Vermont, having folks come out from Colorado, and we'll be prepared over the time that we decide that it's going to take to make sure that we do it correctly and safely. It'll get done. So I would think for all of this, the good news is all of these questions on the budget, on public safety, on cannabis, on the agriculture bill, on all the things that are out there, the really good news for Minnesotans is they're all going to get done in the next 27 days. That's what the legislative session is. That is our expectation. We were putting out budget numbers on schedule months in advance. The work is being done. So it's a little bit different this time. We just now are doing this very publicly. It's out in the open. It's not behind closed doors. There's debates and discussions, compromises, and we're going to see significant tax reductions. We're going to see checks going back to people. I'm going to make my case they need to be a little bigger. We're going to see the cost of child care come down. We're going to see education funding be put into place, and that's what Minnesotans expect us to do, so I'm excited about that. Once again, I want to thank everyone for the work that they do, and as you're at this conference, a final thank you to the state's emergency managers who keep us safe, let us sleep comfortably in our homes at night, and keep monitoring a situation from tornadoes to floods to fire. They're out there on the front lines doing the work, and we're grateful for it. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. We might get through that.